We live in a world just overflowing with information, don't we? It can feel like a huge task sometimes, just trying to get a solid grip on what's really important.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot.
But the amazing thing is, technology offers us these incredible shortcuts to knowledge, tools that can help us learn, much faster and deeper.
And that's a really interesting tension we're digging into in this deep dive, isn't it? And tech gives us amazing access, sure, but it also fundamentally changes how we get that information and what it even means to understand it.
Exactly. So, okay, we're going to tackle 7 key questions about this whole relationship, tech and knowledge. We'll look at, well, everything from the printing press way back when up to modern machine learning.
Right. The idea is to unpack how technology kind of plays this double role. It saves knowledge, but it also completely reshapes how we think about it.
Precisely, giving you the essentials without hopefully making your head spin. So let's jump in with number 1. How has technology affected collective memory and knowledge preservation?
Okay, yeah, this immediately shows that double role. Think about Europe before, say, the mid-1400s. Knowledge was mostly in these handwritten manuscripts.
Right, monks copying things out by hand for years.
Exactly. And they were incredibly fragile. There was this fire at Oxford University Library back in the 13th century, wiped out a huge chunk of their collection. It just highlights how vulnerable everything was.
Wow. One fire could just erase centuries of work. It's kind of hard to imagine that level of risk today with backups and the cloud and everything.
It really is. Then, around 1450, Gutenberg comes along with the printing press.
Game changer.
Total game changer. It slashed the cost of copying texts. Estimates are around like 90% cheaper. Suddenly, ideas could move fast.
Yeah.
Think about Martin Luther's 95 Theses. They got printed up in huge numbers, spread all over the place. Huge role in the Reformation. That's a massive shift in how knowledge was kept and shared.
So the press basically democratized knowledge, opened it up like never before. What's the parallel today? What's our printing press?
Well, in the digital world, I'd have to point to the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine. It's incredible.
Oh, yeah, I've used that. It's amazing.
As of, April 2025, it had archived over 866 billion web pages. Just think about that.
That's staggering.
Everything from the first edits on Wikipedia pages to government press briefings during the pandemic. Even if a site goes down, the archive often has a copy. It's like this sprawling digital library of our online life, constantly preserving our, digital culture.
It's easy to forget it's there, but yeah, it's a
Yeah.
massive record of, us online.
And it's not just digital stuff anymore either. What's really fascinating now is how different fields are coming together on this preservation idea. Like in
Yeah.
Greenland, you've got researchers using biotech.
Biotech for archives.
Yeah, they're creating DNA registers of endangered plants, basically encoding the genetic info into these synthetic time capsules.
Wow.
It's this amazing blend of cutting-edge biology and old-school archiving, protecting knowledge from things like climate change in totally new ways.
From parchment scrolls to DNA capsules. That's quite the journey.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears. Question 2. What is the difference between data, information, and knowledge? Seems simple, but I bet tech muddies the waters.
It definitely does because technology interacts with each layer differently. Okay, tag number 3768.
Okay, 3768 means nothing to me.
Exactly. That's just raw data, a point. But if I tell you that's the daily concentration, parts per million, measured up at Mauna Loa Observatory.
Okay, now it's got context. It means something.
Right. Now it's information, data plus meaning.
Yeah.
Now let's say we plot a whole year of those daily numbers on a graph. We see the ups and downs, the seasonal curve. That's more information, right? It shows patterns over time.
The Keeling curve.
That's the one. But the real jump happens when climate scientists take those long-term trends, analyze them, and use that understanding to advise policymakers. Like at the COP28 climate conference saying, okay, based on these trends, here's the carbon budget we need. That's when it becomes knowledge. Actionable insight driving decisions.
So data is the raw bit. Information is data with context. And knowledge is using that information to understand or do something.
Pretty much, yeah. So next time you see a random statistic online, remember it's just data until you get the context and see how it fits into the bigger picture. That's the key step to actual knowledge.
And technology is crucial for all those steps, isn't it? It's not just sitting there.
Oh, absolutely. Automated sensors collect the raw XC or Euro data, constantly. Then powerful cloud systems crunch those numbers, visualize them into those graphs. That's the information stage.
Okay.
And then you have these policy dashboards, things like Climate Watch. They take complex scientific reports and distill them down into decision-ready knowledge for diplomats or leaders. Tech builds the whole pathway from sensor ping to policy brief.
So tech isn't just a box we put stuff in. It actively shapes data into something useful. Okay, this flows right into question 3. How much is the internet changing what it even means to know something?
This is where things get really interesting and maybe a bit weird for our brains. There was this big study back in 2011, the Google Effect study.
Right? I think I remember hearing about that.
It basically found people were better at remembering where to find information online than remembering the information itself.
Yeah.
It's like our brains are adapting, sort of outsourcing the memory storage to the device in our pocket.
That absolutely rings true. I mean, I barely remember specific dates from history class because I just know I can look them up in 2 seconds if I need to.
Exactly that. Or think about a software engineer, right? They're working on some complex bit of Python code, maybe something tricky like Asensio. They probably don't have every single function memorized.
No way.
Instead, they know it by having the documentation bookmarked, by knowing how to search Stack Overflow effectively.
Right.
It's knowing how to find and use the knowledge. Same for doctors, like at Mount Sinai. They use digital resources like UpToDate constantly, right there during patient rounds. Clinical knowing is now this hybrid thing, quick info retrieval plus their critical judgment.
So it's shifting from internal encyclopedias to being really good librarians of external knowledge, knowing how to access and, crucially, evaluate it. But there's got to be a downside to relying on search all the time.
Well, for sure. A big one. The internet's so open, right? Which is great. But it means reliable knowledge gets tangled up with just noise. Algorithmic noise, you could call it. All the junk that surfaces alongside the good stuff. Remember the monkeypox outbreak in 2022? It's a scary example. Some of the most popular videos on TikTok about it were pushing totally unverified herbal remedies. Millions of views. This was before the World Health Organization could get their official guidance out widely.
Wow. So the bad info spread faster.
Way faster. So just because you can find something instantly doesn't mean it's right or safe. It really underlines how important critical evaluation skills are now. We have to be discerning consumers of this stuff.
That's a really vital point. Convenience isn't the same as correctness. Okay, let's get a bit more philosophical. Question 4. Can a machine actually know something? In what sense?
Yeah. This one sparks a lot of debate. Take AlphaFold 2. In 2023, it predicted the 3D structures of almost all known proteins with incredible accuracy, like down to the atom.
Yeah, that was huge news in science.
Right. And many scientists called it a form of machine knowledge. The system learned patterns from this massive data set, 178,000 protein structures, and could then predict new ones. It wasn't just following step-by-step rules for each one, it sort of inferred the rules.
So it sounds like it genuinely learned something fundamental about protein folding.
It learned to identify patterns and make astonishingly accurate predictions based on them, yes. But here's the catch. It lacks what philosophers call phenomenological awareness. Meaning it doesn't experience anything. It doesn't have that subjective what it's like quality of human consciousness. AlphaFold can predict how a protein folds, but it can't explain why in a conceptual sense, or wonder if its prediction might be wrong, or feel the satisfaction of a discovery.
So it's incredibly sophisticated pattern matching, but not understanding like a person does. It can do the how, but not the why.
Oh, exactly. The philosopher Gilbert Ryle made this useful distinction between knowing how and knowing that. AI is brilliant at procedural knowing how. Like an AI can learn to classify medical images, maybe spot diabetic retinopathy even better than a human doctor by analyzing millions of examples. That's knowing how to perform a task.
Okay.
But it doesn't have the subjective, contextual knowing that, the kind of knowledge tied up with awareness, belief, justification, lived experience. It knows how to classify the image, but it doesn't know that this pattern signifies disease in the way a doctor understands the implications for the patient.
That knowing how versus knowing that split really helps clarify it. Machines excel at the procedure but lack the awareness bit. Okay, this connects to question 5. Does technology let knowledge kind of exist outside of human minds?
I think in many ways it clearly does. Look at GPS, the global positioning system.
Right. Use it every day.
Sailors navigate using signals from satellites, right? That positioning data is constantly calculated, updated by ground control stations. The sailor doesn't need to know orbital mechanics or complex time corrections. They don't internalize the whole system.
Yeah, absolutely not.
The operational knowledge is embedded in the technology, the satellites, the ground network, the receiver. The sailor just uses the output.
That's a perfect example. GPS basically externalizes this huge chunk of knowledge no single person could possibly hold and process in real time.
Precisely. Or think about tools like GitHub Copilot for programmers.
AI coding assistant.
Yeah, it suggests code snippets, even whole functions, based on this vast ocean of open source code it's been trained on. Developers use these suggestions, integrate them without necessarily having mastered every single algorithm or library involved. They're outsourcing part of the knowing how to code this bit to the tool.
So these tools act like external knowledge banks we plug into without needing to download the whole library into our own heads.
Exactly. There's an anthropologist, Veronique Pouyac, who calls these things cognitive exoskeletons.
Cognitive exoskeletons, I like that, like an external frame that boosts our mental abilities.
Yeah, exactly. External repositories, systems, tools that extend our collective smarts, even if the core calculations or data storage happens in silicon, not our skulls.
Okay, cognitive exoskeletons, that's sticking with me. Question 6 brings up another angle. Is simply arranging existing knowledge in new ways a form of knowledge creation itself?
Oh, absolutely. A classic example, historical one, is Dr. John Snow and the 1854 cholera outbreak in London.
The Broad Street pump map.
That's the one. He didn't discover new bacteria or anything. He took existing data, the records of who died where, from parish logs, and he plotted it on a map.
You visualized it.
Exactly. And that simple spatial arrangement revealed this clear cluster of deaths around one particular water pump on Broad Street. The visualization itself demonstrated the waterborne nature of cholera. The knowledge came from the novel arrangement of existing facts.
So organizing data differently, visualizing it, can spark entirely new insights. How does modern tech boost that?
Well, tech platforms are basically built to do this at scale. Think about Google's knowledge graph.
Right, the info boxes that pop up sometimes.
Yeah, it's not just indexing web pages, it's trying to understand the relationships between things, people, places, concepts. It creates these vast semantic networks. So when you search Greta Thunberg, it connects her to activism, which connects to climate policy. It surfaces relationships, arranging info to show connections you didn't explicitly ask for.
It's like the tech is drawing the lines between the dots for us, highlighting patterns we might miss just looking at lists of results.
Exactly. Or look at investigative groups like Bellingcat. They are masters of this. They use open source stuff, satellite maps, social media videos, flight trackers.
All publicly available data, right?
Mostly, yeah. And they layer it, cross-reference it, geolocate videos using map details. By arranging all these scattered public breadcrumbs in just the right way, spatially and temporally, they can build really strong evidence. Like, for war crime investigations, they're not finding secret documents, they're creating knowledge by insightfully arranging what's already out there.
It's like assembling a jigsaw puzzle, where the pieces are scattered all over the internet, but putting them together reveals the picture. Okay, our final question, number 7, kind of pulls it all together. Have technological developments had the greatest impact on what we know, how we know it, or how we store it?
Phew. That's a tough call because obviously all three have been massively changed. Storage, we went from clay tablets to potentially DNA storage. That fundamentally changes preservation.
Right, huge capacity increase.
And tools.
Yeah.
Things like electron microscopes literally opened up new worlds, like virology. They expanded what it was possible to know. Hard to imagine biology today without them.
Almost impossible, yeah. Those tools create entirely new fields of knowledge.
Totally. But if I had to pick the most profound impact, I might lean towards how we know.
How we know. Okay, why?
Think about things like digital twins. These are real-time virtual simulations of physical objects or systems. Like, engineers can build a complete digital replica of a jet engine.
And run tests on the simulation.
Exactly. They can push it to failure points, test modifications, understand its behavior virtually, maybe even before a physical prototype is built. This fundamentally changes the process of discovery and validation in engineering. It's not just faster, it's a different way of generating knowledge.
Instead of just relying on building it and breaking it physically, you can iterate and learn in the digital realm at incredible speed.
Precisely. And maybe the most striking recent example is the COVID-19 mRNA vaccine development.
Right, that was incredibly fast.
The basic design was done in silico, using computers within something like 48 hours of the virus's genetic sequence being published.
48 hours.
Yeah, that kind of compressed discovery cycle, driven by computational power and modeling, It fundamentally changes our relationship with evidence, with testing, with uncertainty. I think that shift in the method of knowing, the how, is perhaps even more transformative in the long run than just having more data stored or new subjects to study.
That speed, that reliance on digital modeling and simulation as a core part of discovery,
Yeah.
yeah, that feels like a truly fundamental shift in how knowledge gets made.
Absolutely. So, wrapping it all up, as we've kind of walked through with these questions, technology is this incredible double-edged sword, isn't it? It's a powerful guardian, preserving our knowledge, but it's also this radical force that's constantly reshaping how we find things out and what understanding even looks like.
Yeah, it's really clear these innovations aren't just piling more facts onto the heap. They're actually redrawing the map of how we get to knowledge in the first place.
Yeah.
Like you said, authority shifts,
hmm
maybe from individual memory to massive metadata stores, and from the idea of a lone genius to the power of networked intelligence.
hmm And that, I think, brings us to the key takeaway from you listening. As we keep adopting these incredibly powerful tools, it's becoming super important to develop not just the skills to use them, the tech fluency, but also that habit of critical reflection. Meaning
Mhm.
we always need to be asking ourselves, okay, what can I learn with this tool? But also, how is this tool itself changing me? How is it shaping my attention, my memory, my sense of what it means to truly know something? That's the deeper question we need to keep wrestling with.